Balisong opinions are so subjective, to the point that even talking about them at all is difficult, let alone reviewing them. While some things can be objectively measured like the weight, material durability, and the quality of the tuning, thoughts on things like how these feel in the hand, the value, how attractive the design is, and most importantly, how they flip, is going to be completely different depending on who you ask. And there are very few balisongs that represent that point better than the GLIDR Pacific. GLIDR has been making generally well-received balisongs since October of 2018, which is actually around the same time that I bought my first balisong with my own money, the Squid Industries Squiddy. From the original line of balisongs, weird stuff with circular handles like the Sahara, not so great stuff like the Bermuda, and finally the well-received Arctic and Antarctic line. GLIDR has definitely solidified themselves as reliable makers offering products with fairly reasonable, not Chinese level pricing. And they're Australian, mate, so let's put another shrimp inside of my body because protein is important. Aww. But unlike relatively recent releases like the Antarctic and the Arctic, both of which Will and I enjoy a lot, the Pacific has to be one of the most polarizing balisongs GLIDR has released in years. I saw a few videos about it here and there, but it was Ethan's video on the Blade Bias channel that really got me interested, primarily with that video title, So Close Yet So Far. It seemed like they were offering a really compelling package. A full channel aluminum balisong, something they haven't made since the OG4, with adjustable balance that doesn't require disassembly, a great unboxing experience with replacement hardware, a weight that's in line with a lot of other very highly regarded balisongs, and a texture that looked like it might be one of the most grippy aluminum balisongs to date. All for $165, very similar pricing to the Antarctic line. That all looked pretty sweet to me, so I reached out to them for a review unit and set out to prove that this thing was not as polarizing as most people were making it out to be. Then I got it in hand, and I actually enjoyed how it flipped quite a bit. I even smoothed out my not so smooth behind the 8-ball trick on this, and while I did think the flipping was different than most things in my collection, not so much that I thought it was bad by any means. Then while shooting B-roll for the Squiddy WH video that we did, I had Will try it, and my dreams of making a quick and simple review were immediately dashed. Him and I strongly disagreed about how we felt about this. More than probably anything ever in the history of this channel. Like more than the Amazon stuff that we unboxed. And oh sweet mother of Mary and Joseph, we will get to how all that turned out. But for now, I had to dig into why this thing felt so different to so many people. Everyone in this hobby knows a different array of tricks. You'd be very hard pressed to find any two people that know the same exact number and types of tricks. Mostly because we're all at different skill levels, we live in different environments, we have different levels of income, so what's good to one person could be completely different to somebody else. Even just the sound a balisong makes could completely dominate somebody's opinion on it. Please don't make me come. I tend to prefer balisongs with good grip, with a nice deep clack, a lot of color options, and a fair bit of modularity. And the Pacific has all of that. My flipping skill still isn't anything to write home about, which is partially intentional so I can provide a more beginner-friendly perspective on balisongs compared to Will. But I'm getting better and better at flipping by the day, and I can at least figure out the objective reasons this might be weird. So it's on Detective Brandon to solve this cold case. Actually, this case is pretty warm. Hey Brandon clones, could we get a warmer case at cases.willhirsch.gay, where we have 5 custom balisong cases to choose from for your lovely collection. As I mentioned earlier, this has a modular balance at the base of the handles. In the lightest configuration, it weighs 4 ounces, 4.1 ounces with the lightweights, and 4.2 ounces with the heavyweights. It has 6061 aluminum handles, a 440C stainless steel blackened blade, T10 Torx pivot screws, press fit steel Zen pins, a bushing pivot system, and stainless steel washers. Those are all very solid materials. Some have bemoaned the use of 6061 aluminum here, since it's lower durability than the higher-end industry standard 7075 aluminum used in products like the Cracker-Akin and Volt Pro. The Antarctic is made out of 6061 aluminum, and after I fixed mine after a weird drop that made the handles lock up, I've dropped this over 200 times now directly onto concrete, and it still flips like an absolute champ. but I do think the upgrade to 7075 aluminum would have been nice here, not only from a value and durability standpoint, but also because it does factor into the flippability equation, since 6061 is lighter than 7075. And the whole balisong market has changed drastically since we last reviewed one of their products, so it's very difficult to keep up, but there are new things that people expect. My Pacific has taken some drops onto tile, and it's gotten more scuffed up than I would like. Despite the lower grade aluminum, this having just 2 screws, press fit Zen pins, and a very good bushing pivot tune that I've had no issues taking apart and putting back together, indicate that this is going to take a beating very well, just not cosmetically. And as for the grip, holy hell, that's probably the first thing you noticed when you saw B-roll of this thing. It is ribbed for your pleasure. Ooh, ribbed. Satisfaction. Too much, maybe? This is far and away the most grippy aluminum balisong on the market. Period. Maybe the most grippy one ever. And while I was initially not a huge fan, textures like this tend to smooth out as you flip it, and this definitely has. And it's fantastic in most areas, except when doing chaplains, where the texture wrapping around can dig into your finger during extended flipping sessions. It's got some faux speed channels on the side and some excellent jimping for ladder tricks. And as I mentioned earlier, this comes in a great carrying case with replacement hardware and a DIY 3D printed balisong stand. And since we last made a video covering their stuff, they actually have several free 3D printing files if you want to print your own stands if you have a 3D printer. So on paper, there is so much to love here. But it all comes down to how it distributes the weight. You're still here. Well, you're the one that won't let me do a Yahoo gag. Of course I'm gonna drag this shit out. For the modular weight system, GLIDR collaborated with NRB, who used the same system in his Koenig line of products. It's just a couple of threaded weights that screw into the bottom of the handles, and it's by far one of the easiest modular weight systems yet. But as I tried all the different configurations, I never found one that truly felt right for me. Most of them didn't feel bad, just different than my huge collection, which was a nice change of pace. But having no weights felt like it didn't carry quite enough momentum, the light weights make it feel a little too handle heavy, and heavy weights make it extremely handle heavy. I even got some zippy inserts for the blade, which look sick, but they didn't really improve the flipping in any particular way for me. I even compared it to my list of weight distributions I made for other balisongs, and it was pretty much perfectly in the middle, like nothing abnormal. So this is where not just the weight, but the overall weight distribution and subjectivity come into play. The overall weight of a balisong or the materials used will never give a proper estimation on how something really feels to flip. With no weights, this weighs 4 ounces. But it feels much heavier than something like my Volt Pro, which is also 4 ounces, which I believe comes down to the pretty long handles and the blade, since this is much taller than the Antarctic or the Arctic, with a lot more steel focused at the tip of the blade and less steel at the base of the blade. And then you combine that with the concentrated weight at the end of the handles when you have the weight screws in, and that's where it gets funky. As for subjectivity, this is where I decided to delay this review by several weeks so Blade Show 2024 could take place, and I got a lot of feedback from people there. The overall consensus? The vast majority enjoyed it, but felt it was inconsistent. A few loved it, but most thought it just flipped solidly, and they liked the grip and the design. Even my Blade Bias podcast co-host, Ethan, he ended up liking it a little more than he did on first impression, and a flipper with some very fascinating opinions, DJ Eyeless Pyro, said, and I quote, "It's the best balisong GLIDR has ever made." But that isn't saying much. So it's just kind of an enigma, especially because it checks pretty much all the boxes of what I look for in my flipping style. Good grip? Check. Customizable? Check. Solid clack sound? Check. Decent at aerials? Check. Decent at fanning? Check. Good if not slightly uncomfortable chaplains? Check. Decent at rollovers? Very check. So if I and most of the community think it's at least a decent option, then why does he think almost the exact opposite? So take it away, Will from the future, at a separate time, a separate place, and a separate viewing angle, but still the same Batman transition.
So I'm doing my segment outside over grass because this is the only place that I can do it without definitely dropping it onto concrete multiple times. Because let's be honest, this is one of the weirdest balisongs we've ever had on the channel. When Brandon handed it to me, originally, I literally said, I hate this thing. The weights are super easy to adjust, so I think the weight system's really cool. But the problem is that almost none of the weight configurations are actually any good for some reason. It feels wrong to flip and goes out of my hands all the time when doing all sorts of tricks. And I don't know why. I don't know why this thing fights me every step of the way while I'm trying to flip it, but it really feels like it does. With the full weights inside of this thing, it's like fine. It's fun in the same way that my chab is. Oh my God. I cannot flip this thing without paying full attention to it though, because every time I do that and I try to do a trick, it just says no. And what's the most frustrating to me about it is that it looks great. Like, everything about it design-wise is awesome. It is an aluminum channel balisong. There is no reason that this should flip this badly, and yet it does. Like, the only reason I would even pick this thing up is with the heavyweights in it. Otherwise, I find it genuinely extremely frustrating to flip. Even just trying to do a little thumb rollover that I would normally do, like, the weight is just so wacky and weird that it likes to, like, fly out of my hand instead of just doing it. I would not suggest that anyone really buy it unless they really want a unique experience and want to learn to flip with a unique experience. Because, like, anyone can learn to flip anything well, but I just keep finding that with all of the tricks that I throw at it, it does not want to listen to me and instead literally will reject whatever I'm doing and fly out of my hand randomly unless I have the heavyweights installed. It's a weird one and it's frustrating to me because everything else about it is really good. This is great execution, but for some reason, it just does not want to do what I want it to do. That's pretty much it. Thank you. Back to Brandon.
So, as you can see, this is one tough cookie to crack. Okay, that was actually extremely easy. What I meant is that this is a tough cookie to crack. See? Get it? Words, humor, ha, laugh, please. Ultimately, whether you're gonna like a balisong or not is gonna come down to preference, but we can't deny that there's some funkiness going on here. I've bounced back and forth on if I like it with no weights or the light weights, and for now I think that I like it with the light weights because while it makes it a little handle heavy, that ultimately suits my style of flipping since I do a lot of rollovers and aerials. The heaviest weights are just too much for me and it feels like it's just slowing down my flipping across the board. But you could feel completely differently than I do. Obviously, Will does in a lot of areas. I've heard a slightly different opinion from almost every person I've talked to. For example, here's what one of our VIP Patreon supporters in our VIP voice chat, who's an amazing flipper, said about it when I asked them about it.
It is so much less weird than I expected. I should not have listened to anybody. It's like really fine, but it's fun.
But if you want something that's super grippy, does have a modular balance, is overall very well machined, with tons of color options, the Pacific should be on your radar. And it gives the opportunity to feel out different weight distributions, which is always a huge win for me. That weight system is of course what pushed Will to at least barely tolerating it, so the weight system does work. But the balance has a lot of room to improve, so I hope to see that in a Pacific V2, since the overall aesthetic is a home run to me, and most people I've talked to. Availability with GLIDR products is extremely tricky since GLIDR only does drops like every 4 to 6 months on average on their website, and they announce drops via Instagram. Compared to their other products, I'd say the Arctic and Antarctic were overall more well-rounded balisongs as a whole, with a more standard balance point. But GLIDR, I know you're watching this. I love the direction you're going in. You're obviously trying to make something unique, and that shows. It just needs a little bit more fine-tuning, and I think it could be awesome. Especially, I hear there's a titanium version potentially in the works, and that could also be a huge home run. So please keep doing what you're doing. But it's gonna be up to the community to decide how much they enjoy the Pacific. Not right now, literal entire Pacific Ocean. Daddy's working. In my opinion, as long as you're okay flipping something with a wonky balance, you'll probably enjoy the Pacific. But for me, I would only buy this because I enjoy collecting unique balisongs and not because it's an amazing flipping experience. Competitors within the price range, such as the Squid Industries Squid Trainer V4 and the Swordfish, and even stuff like the Volt Pro False Live Blade and the Trainer, I'd say offer more consistent flipping but have less grip and modularity. BB Barfly also has products that are a little quirky in their flipping like the Pacific, but less so, also with a lot of color options. If you want to see where this stacks up for me, you can see my personal ranking of balisongs I own on my sortable spreadsheet linked in the description. But what do you think? Do you own any other GLIDR products? And if you have a Pacific, how has it resonated with you? I don't think I've ever been more curious to hear the community's thoughts on a balisong that we didn't make. You can let me know by leaving a comment here or shooting me a message at the Brandon Baker on Instagram, or join our Patreon where we have a ton of amazing content creators, modders, balisong makers, and just members of the community that have tons of great insight to give. So huge thanks to them for supporting us for as little as $3 a month. And thank you if you made it to the end of this video. I'm still experimenting with this new format. I know it's very different than the normal Will Hirsch video format, but I'm having fun with it. It's more streamlined to produce, and I still get to loop Will in with the Will Hirsch flip style segment, so I'm having fun with it. But if there's ways that you think it could be changed or be more efficient, please leave a comment and let me know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to determine which one I like better. The new Machine-Wise Sasori, which replaces the Prisma line of products, or the Benchmade Necron, which replaces every thought that I could have possibly had about any subject. Why would you design it like this? Why would you make it like this? Why have you done this? Why have you done that?